All right, guys, we are back at CEDIA 2023. We're in the Masimo Training Center. We're going to be talking about the Denon AVR-X6800H AV receiver. Hey folks, I'm Gene Delasella with Audioholics. We're here with Phil Jones again. Phil, how are you, my friend?
Good, my friend, good. It's nice seeing you.
I love doing these videos with Phil because he always knows every question I'm going to ask him.
It does not have a... I got to look at the back of that. Yes, I knew you were going to ask me.
There's a lot to ask about this receiver.
Stump the Phil today, okay.
Stump the Phil. So this is the 6800H. It replaces the 6700, which came out in 2020.
Yeah, but if you think about it, that's still a pretty state-of-the-art piece. I mean, the latest in surround sound formats, most of them. There's a new one we're going to talk about, but all the majors still supported, Dolby Atmos, IMAX Enhanced, DTSX, and Aural 3D. There's receivers now that don't support all those different formats.
So there's a bunch of new features on here. I'm going to try to remember them from my head, and then you could go into them. The first thing, the most important thing for gamers especially, is there's now 7 8K inputs. The 6700 only had one 8K input.
Yes.
We've got 4 subwoofer outputs, independent with digital delay and level and directional bass. We've got Audyssey and Dirac with 2 speaker presets I want you to talk about. We've got the HDMI diagnostic that's been updated. We've got an enhanced GUI that's been updated. And we've got Sony 360 reality audio.
Yeah,
did I leave anything out? Or did
those are the main ones, but I'm sure we'll probably come across some more as we go along. Okay. So why don't we start with the one that the Vidiots always care about, which is HDMI. So when we came up with the original one, people were like, why does the 6700 only have 1 HDMI in and 2 HDMI outs? And that has to do with the bandwidth of the boards that were available. You could buy a one that was kind of a full bandwidth, which was about 40 gigabits per second, and one that was about 24 gigabits per second. For you geeks out there, if you look at it, it'll say like 4K 120 A and B. B means compressed, A means uncompressed. A lot of times they don't show you that, but we said we were going to use the best board possible, but it only could support, maybe 1 input and 2 outputs. But you guys kept saying, I want more, I want more, I want more. So this has 7 inputs and 8K inputs and multiple outputs. In order to do that, this is the board and able to do that. The size of this thing is absolutely massive. So we actually have to have basically metric switches, multiple HDMI boards. So in order to do this, we have to use this type of board, and you can see how elaborate it is. By the way, 6 inputs is 3 boards, 7 inputs is 4 boards. Wow. So people go, why does this cost a little bit more? The jump between like maybe like a 6800 or a 4800 over 3800 is when you just adding that extra HDMI input, 1 more requires a secondary board. Wow. But the nice thing is the best in HDMI on the market today. And this is the same board, by the way, that's found in your Marantz AV10, the big A1Hs. So the best board for video that we make is in this unit.
And that's the great thing about having both brands under your umbrella, is that trickle-down technology from the flagships into a receiver.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because we have one engineering team doing all of our video work, that means that, regardless of one of our brand, of what model you get, you're going to get great performance. For example, this is a little HEOS cart board. This HEOS board is used in everything. So whether you have a Denon Home, an X6800, an AV10, eventually a Class A piece, they're all going to have this, right? Which means there is no better HEOS board. It's just a great board, and economy of scale. Price stays down while performance goes up, and you know that everything is going to work perfectly together.
Right.
So there are some benefits to that.
So now let's talk about the 4 independent subwoofer outputs and directional bass.
Yeah, well, we know that, and you've taught forever that if you want smooth bass response in the room, continue to add subs. Because, one sub, you get peaks and nulls. You add 2 subs where they're positioned. The peaks and nulls are different. It starts to smooth out. Adding more subwoofers gives you smoother bass.
Yep.
So we want to give you, so now this unit, the old one had 2 sub outs, but Gene and you guys like you said more subs, more subs, more subs. So now we added 4. So those subs can be used in traditional LFE, where they all play just the exact same thing. And maybe if you have a small speaker, they all help that small speaker generate bass, right? But now we have directional bass. So all 4 subs still play the LFE, but then the sub closest to where the action is happening plays additional bass from that particular channel.
If that speaker is bass managed.
If that speaker is bass managed. So you could actually do that as well.
So having 4 sub outs with independent delay control, that was something that was unheard of 5-6 years ago, even in the really expensive AV processors. The fact that you're getting that now, this is what, $3,500
Yeah,
retail?
$3,500.
$3,500 retail, you got 11 channels of amplification, 13 channels of processing, 4 independent subwoofer outputs. That's pretty awesome. The other thing I wanted to ask you, what we didn't talk about as another feature, doesn't this have a preamp mode as well?
Yes. Thank you. We've improved our preamp mode. So the original request was a lot of times people buy an AVR and they decide they want to maybe grow their system. So maybe they want to go out and buy an amplifier and use this as a preamp. The nice thing about a big amp, it's a buy once, cry once proposition. Because if you look at an amp that's 10, 12 years old, the amplifier is great. If you buy an AVR, the amplifier is great, but all of the video technology, surround sound, makes it a dinosaur. So a lot of times you can start off with an AVR, buy that great amp, and then continue to use that amp for years to come. So we put it in a preamp mode. So the preamp mode basically disconnects the preamp circuitry of this from the internal amplifiers of the receiver. Those amps are still on. They're just disconnected.
So the advantage of that, guys, years ago I was measuring a lot of the preamp outputs on receivers, and when I got past like 1.5 volts or 1.4 volts, I would notice some distortion would rise on the preamp outputs. I couldn't figure out why until I realized like 1.4 volts would reach the maximum gain on these amplifiers, even if they're unloaded. And that distortion could potentially feed back into the preamp signal. So having the preamp out disconnect like that gives you the purest preamplifier. It's a dedicated preamp. And one thing I love about Denon is all their models would put out a clean 4 volts RMS. That's twice the voltage that you need for most amplifiers to drive the full power when they have a gain of about 26 to 29 dB. So that's awesome that you have a really strong preamp output drive, 4 independent subwoofer outputs.
Yeah, and the other thing too was it was an all or nothing proposition. So if I put it in the preamp mode, it disconnected all of the amplifiers, which means you have to have an amplifier for every channel and every speaker in your home.
Right.
That was in your theater space. So request was, can you make it kind of adjustable? So now what you can do is you can buy you'll go into the menu, instead of it just being preamp mode on or preamp mode off, it'll ask you what channels would you like to turn on. So most people, so you can start off with maybe just doing your mains, because that's the ones that most people want to do for music and things like that. Then add a center, and then maybe add your surrounds, use the power from this to drive your heights, and maybe a second or third zone. So that added a lot of flexibility by doing that. Speaking of that all or nothing proposition, back in the days, we have the ability for HDMI to set it to output for 8K, HDMI 2.1 or HDMI 2.0B, which was enhanced, or HDMI 1.4, which was standard. But it was an all or nothing proposition. If I switched the receiver to HDMI 2.1, that was every single input did that, right? Or actually the output. It wasn't, you couldn't modify the receiver to maximize the HDMI capability of the source you had connected to it.
Right.
So now each source is independent. So if I have an older DVD player, I can set that input to standard HDMI 1.4. If I have maybe a Roku or an Apple TV or a Kaleidoscope or a Blu-ray player that supports 4K, I can switch that input to enhanced, And then if I have maybe a game system, Xbox, PlayStation 5, I can switch that to 8K enhanced. The benefit is more reliability and more likely compatibility.
You won't get as many handshake issues.
Won't get as many handshake issues.
So always remember that, guys, when you're setting this up for the first time and you have an Apple TV and you want to pass Dolby Vision, if you don't put it on enhanced on the input, you're not going to pass it.
It's not enough bandwidth.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So back to the 4 subwoofer outputs and Dirac Live. I want to put you on the spot. Are we going to get some upgrades to Dirac? Are we going to get Dirac bass control and possibly one day art?
Well, like I said, we realize that we want to give our users and owners more flexibility. Working with Dirac to continue to add more capabilities. We started with Dirac Limited and Dirac Full, and probably in the upcoming future you will see different versions of Dirac. But like I said, that's teamwork between our Denon and Marantz engineering teams and Dirac to get that done. But we realized that that's things that would be a request.
You've got the architecture here.
We have the architecture. Yeah. Remember it's just making sure that the software works, that their software and how it does it works properly with the receiver, and that takes a little bit of time.
So this has 2 speaker presets like the other models, and you could do different configurations of Audyssey and Dirac, so you can compare them directly.
Yeah, you have 2 speaker, the unit has 2 speaker presets. If you do Dirac, that preset goes onto preset number 2. But also, if you do a Dirac compensation, you could put 3 filters, Dirac filters, under speaker preset number 2. So you can do maybe an Audyssey for speaker preset number 1 and a Dirac for speaker preset number 2 with 4 filters. So literally you can have 4 different compensation settings, maybe theater screen up, screen down, maybe a music one,
up and down, that kind of stuff.
That kind of stuff. So it gives you a whole lot of flexibility. A couple of things you want to talk about when people are comparing which one's best is the one you like. If you look at currently, Audyssey will set things like your crossover settings, and Dirac you have to do that yourself, right? If you go into Audyssey, you get access to maybe dynamic volume. So if you want to, that's that feature that automatically boosts the high frequencies and low frequencies, a little bit of center channel at lower volumes, so you get kind of a good surround sound effect at low volumes. That's an Audyssey thing, not a Dirac thing. One thing I've noticed too, for you people who set these up, and I think we talked about it. You do a Dirac calibration, and then you say put it in 2, and then you do an Audyssey calibration. You put it in 1, and you go in and use maybe the software program from Audyssey to build your own target curves, and then you build your own target curve for the Dirac, and then you play it, and you go, why does the Dirac play so much louder? Sometimes you'll see it 6 dB louder, and that is because what Audyssey does is after it does Audyssey, it sets a reference level. So if you switch your AVR to its dB scale, it comes out of the box like 0 to 89. But if you switch it to dB, minus 50 something dB to plus 17 dB, when you get to 0 dB, it's reference level. So it will attenuate your speakers if they're really overly efficient to reference level. So not only does it level match everything, it sets 0 dB as reference level. And Dirac doesn't do that, so sometimes Dirac seems to play louder.
That's a really good point, and it's hard if you're making a comparison between the two. You really got to make sure you level match. The great thing about Denon and your sister company Marantz is you guys are the only companies on the market that give you both room correction systems in one box. So you can go and tweak to your heart's content and choose your favorite flavor, basically.
Exactly. When it comes to room compensation or surround sound modes, we are agnostic. We give you all of the options and you choose the best one. Some people just live and die by Dirac. Some people say Audyssey is perfectly fine because it's simpler and it can be done almost automatically, right? Some people just want Dirac because the receiver is 2 stories down in the basement and they just don't want to run an Audyssey microphone all the way up. And they want to just plug the microphone into the PC.
Laptop,
So we just want to give our owners the flexibility of choosing the piece that they like.
Sure. So speaking of surround formats, you've added something from Sony on this. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So one thing that's nice about us, because if you look at the fact that you're looking at Denon and Marantz and how big we are normally the first to launch things. We were the first to launch Dolby Digital. We were the first to, Dolby Atmos and DTSX and IMAX Enhanced. We're the only ones, we do Auro 3D. Well, now there's a new one called Reality 360 Reality Audio. That is a format that was developed by Sony for kind of immersive music experiences. And it's available on a lot of different streaming services, including Tidal and some other services as well. And that is another immersive technology. And we are one of the first receivers that support it. So it's another example of, we just want to give you all of the different options. The biggest challenge right now is it's in the service and the receiver supports it, but getting it there. So for example, Tidal supports Dolby Atmos. And the way you get Dolby Atmos music from Tidal into a receiver would be you get maybe a Apple TV, or maybe use the internal app of a Sony television set, and then via ARC, you now have Dolby Atmos. And that's going to be kind of how you're going to have to do it to get 360 Reality Audio. So say you have Tidal and you get one of those, currently I think it's one of those little Google Audio or Google HDMI Google-based Google pucks. Then that service, you can plug it into here and go to one of the services that support it, and now you can get the information from the service into the box so we can decode it.
You pretty much support every format on the market that's current right now. That's awesome. So another cool thing about this is you have the updated GUI that's in all the modern Denon and Marantz products. You want to talk a little bit about how that changes from what was in the 6700?
So we started making changes last year to the GUI. And that was because TVs are getting bigger, so you want a higher resolution GUI. There's a lot more capabilities, and customers don't want to read the manual. So it needs to have more instructions. It needs to have sharper text. It needs to be easier to work through. So where things are organized, where things are local or located in the menu, we cleaned it up. We added additional options for you, and then we've even made a new web UI to go along with it. So I give examples of some things we did to make it shorter. Before, you used to have to say, go into one page and say, my speakers are large or small. Then you have to go someplace else and set your crossovers. Now it's just one place, it goes full range, which happens to be large, and then full range 40, 60, 80, 120, 150. So you can do it all from one location instead of having to jump around.
That's awesome.
So we're just trying to look at it, and based on feedback from guys like you, how do we make it simpler for people to set up?
Sure. So another thing that's new to this model is the HDMI diagnostic tool is improved.
Yes. So HDMI, 90% of the time, it's not the receiver that's causing the problem, it's the cable. And a lot of times we want to blame the black box, and it's really not our fault. So a few years ago, back in 2017, we added HDMI diagnostics tool. Now this was a pro thing, and most of the time it's for pros and hardcore enthusiasts. But we would only share the information with the pros because it was this really complex button push on the front of the screen, and you had to use the unit's on-screen remote control, and you're in the service menu, and you have to read this, and you have to have a special code and things like that. That has changed. Now we have a very good web UI where you can actually log into the receiver, and if you know its IP address, once you go in there, there's an advanced menu. And if you know the password, which is basically the model number, you can get into a tool called HDMI Diagnostics. There's another one over there called CI mode. If you don't know what it is, don't mess with it, okay? And and using the HDMI Diagnostics tool, you can actually test cables. You can limit EDIT. That's new for this year. So say you have an old Blu-ray player or an old DVD player, and it's communicating incorrectly, the TV and the Blu-ray player communicating incorrectly, you can go in here and use this as an EDIT monitoring tool. An EDIT monitoring modification device can be anywhere from $200 to $300. It's built in. An HDMI testing tool to test cables is normally a couple of $1,000. It's built in. So a lot of dealers now, instead of going and buying a $3,000 cable tester, are using maybe an X1800 to test their cables with.
There's a lot of hidden stuff that's really great for the custom integrator or for the enthusiast that really knows what's going on when they're setting up their system.
Exactly.
The last thing I wanted to talk about, we didn't talk about the amplifiers. It's basically the same power ratings from the 6700, which was 140 times 11. Now you guys have that 70% rule. I think it's for 5 channels, but I've always tested your products and it met it to 7 channels. So you could count on this thing putting out almost 100 watts a channel, guaranteed for 5 channels. I'm going to tell you it's probably closer to 7 channels. So there's a lot of capability here. But the fact that you could do the preamp disconnect, you could, like you said, you could do 6 height channels, whatever, and use the internal amps here, which is going to give you a good solid 100 watts a channel with all those channels driven, and then get your kick-ass mono blocks or, you know, your big honking 7-channel amplifier to really power up your system.
Exactly, because all we're trying to do is, we know that you want great sound. So Denon is committed at 110 years of delivering great sound. But we also realize that there's other things you have to factor in. How well multi-zone music, and how well does it work with my game system, and video, and is it easy to set up, and how do I fit it in my room? So we continue to not only evolve the audio quality, but we work hard to improve the receiver's user interface.
Well, awesome, Phil. Do you have anything else you want to add that we didn't cover on this, or do you think we hit all of the nuts and bolts on the upgrades from the 6700 to 6800?
I think we hit most of them. We're quite proud of this piece. I mean, if you look at its feature set and you compare it to anything else, it's world ahead of it, just about anything.
You know what we should do? We should, after the CEDIA show, we should get on a live stream on our channel, and we could go over the HDMI diagnostics to show people how to use it.
Yes, I think we should do that. I think it'd be fun to go in and talk about the HDMI diagnostics. The new web UI is, if you're not using it, and there's a lot of little cool things that we normally don't advertise on the website, but if you're kind of a do-it-yourselfer, and you really want to get in and have control of your receiver, there's some things I'd love to show you.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you always dropping the knowledge here on Audioholics. Guys, if you like this video, please hit the thumb up, hit subscribe. Don't forget about our Patreon channel at patreon.com/Audioholics. We appreciate your support. You get direct access to me if you want to suggest video topics. And until next time, my friends, keep listening. All right, guys, is it ready? We're going to be talking about the Denon AVR-6800X. I screwed that up. The
X6700H. 6800.
AVR-X6800.
That is, then we just called it X6800.
All right, I'm going to start over.
Okay.